Greetings. Welcome to Speak Nerd and Enter.
Hi.
I told him.
What's up?
I knew I was doing that kind of party.
Speak Nerd and Enter. Welcome. Over there, kind of in the middle, is Mark. Mark, go ahead and wave.
Hey.
All right. And over on the far end there is our boy Rich.
Hello.
You know me, Sean. And haloed by the...
Necron Halo.
The bold choice, Kelly.
It
Bold
was.
choice of decor.
It was a bold one. Don't think that he didn't know what that was going to be.
No,
That's right. We have Rich with in the downstairs junk room. We have me with the clean white wall. We have Sean showing off his collection, and then we have Kelly. Don't move your camera.
Yeah, don't do that. I like it. Yeah, I liked it with the halo effect. That was much better. There we go.
I like my
Haloed or green afro.
Yeah.
It's a Necron Halo.
Is everyone's favorite optimist the K-Man?
What's up?
There you go. So what's been going on, boys? First, I wanted to ask, did any of you see Killer of Killers?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, you haven't?
I don't think it's fair to say what's going on and then start to ask a question on top of that. You didn't
Sure.
allow
What's
me
going
to
on?
answer the first one.
No one ever told you life was fair.
Oh, okay.
That's true. Write your congressman.
Oh, man, I was hoping you guys had seen that. I really wanted to talk about that, too.
Well, we can't, so move on.
Did any of you see Sinners?
I saw Sinners in the movie theater.
And
Moving on.
Kelly, you've been because I saw that, Mark, and I do have a couple of issues with it. But I can't bring them up.
All right, we'll come back to that. We can discuss your many issues.
Shut up. Okay, man, you've been reading, and I've on purpose I've been staying away from your comments.
I know that hurts my heart.
I know. I wanted to
like I yesterday I wrote this very long diatribe. And I was gonna send it, and I was like, Sean's never gonna fucking respond. So I just a couple of sentences. That's all I did. You know, it's just like the hell with this.
Save it for the show.
Because right, that's what I'm thinking. Right, yeah. So I wanted to stay away from it so that I could, hear what your thoughts were there. Yeah. I know the preliminary thoughts you had on, of course, Betrayer, and I wanted to find out, what do you think of that in the end? And I know you started to reread Master of Mankind, I think, and I wanted to see what you thought. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, Betrayer. I was not a big fan of how Betrayer started, right? And my big beef with that is sort of the dialogue between the Space Marines as they go into fight, and I was just like, this is 40K meets Gilmore Girls, and I was really uninterested. And then it started to get, a little bit better. And by the end, I was completely sucked in. I'm in the story. I just, I can do without the witty banter between Space Marines. Come on. They're all over the map with this when they write. You read something like Cypher and the way the Dark Angels talk to one another, way different than how the World Eaters are having this witty banter about fighting the Ultramarines. And but it did get better when you got more into the Primarchs dealing with one another, and who was it, Lorgar trying to his whole plan to save Angron from the nails. It was really good, but
bad plan.
Well, the story worked out. Yeah. Yeah, no, the story worked out, but then it made me want to go back to the Master of Mankind, because it has that whole bit in there, the Emperor talking to Ark and Lan about the the nails and that kind of thing. And I wanted to revisit all of that. I just think the 40K universe for me is more. The more information you get, the more you need to go back and look at other stuff that you've read, because it provides more context around some of it, and just a different take. Master of Mankind, though, still hands down one of the best. Belisarius Call is still the best book that I've read out of the 40K universe. But Master of Mankind, I mean, you kind of get it. Um, my opinion of the Emperor has softened ever so slightly. Not a lot. I mean, I still think he's his own problem, right? But I get it. I mean, I was laying a lot of stuff at his feet and saying that he was full of hubris and things like that. He's just a dude that lived for a long time, made a regrettable series of decisions, and it just is what it is. I mean, you have to take it. That whole bit where the Emperor's talking to Ra, and Ra's questioning him. How could you not see what was going to happen and that kind of thing. The whole foresight discussion, again, I think sums it up. Is that when you look at the Emperor and what people have turned him into as this living god, but he's not. I mean, he's not omniscient. He's just making a plan. He's trying to execute a plan, and everything went sideways. It's just that at the end of the day, it's a regrettable series of decisions, but it's one that as the reader you get to judge in reverse, and it probably stands out a lot more. But in his position, how was he supposed to know something was going to go the way it went? So, that it's fascinating. I wish I could get more stories like that. But you get some really,
Like which one?
like the Master of Mankind,
Oh, yeah,
or
yeah.
Belisarius Call. Books that
Yeah.
are executed that well. Betrayer, the sort of the after you get past the first 25% of the story and the witty banter, then you get back into the meat of the story. It starts to really take off. It finds its footing. Um, but I do think I'm pretty solid in the camp of Dan Abnett as my favorite author of 40K books.
Really?
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Dan Abnett, I think is what would I think he dropped a notch for me because
Where?
of how he ended the Horus Heresy. That last book was not.
In the end and the death.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Well,
it
part
it
1 and 2 and 3.
yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't as well executed as I wanted it to be. It reminded me a little bit of like Ang Lee's Incredible Hulk, and the finale to that, how it was just like this big cloud and flashes here and there, and all this. Yeah, it was trying to be higher art than it should have been, because the visceralness of the 40K universe is what really the hyper brutal reality of it is what makes it so unique amongst all these other settings. And so I felt like it detached itself from that too much. It felt almost in a way like he wasn't quite sure how to finish it. And so he tried to go this highbrow route that came across to me as shortcutting
Yeah.
shortcutting the story. Like Luke, not actually being there and fighting all the AT-ATs and all that, but just being a force projection and all that stuff. It was that level of disappointment for me. You're talking about the Emperor versus Horus. I don't want to watch the tow truck, pulling Bumblebee around. I want to see those two going at it. You know what I mean? And it felt somehow less than in
Well,
that
I
way.
mean, one of the criticisms I would have of the 40K universe is how they write for the Emperor in a lot of ways. It's whoever they have as their main character in the book is the one who really sort of owns the storyline. I mean, like in Betrayer, they focus so much on the World Eaters.
What was their
That
book? I mean,
Well,
really.
yeah, but I mean, they a token sentence or two about how awesome the Ultramarines are, and then the next, 7 pages is about how they're getting their butt kicked, by the World Eaters. So there's an element of there's not a lot of balance in it. Even in Master of Mankind, I mean, they're building up the Emperor, and then he goes into the webway and gets his butt handed to him by a demon he can't kill, that he then imprisons in Ra and tells him to run it forever into the webway. I mean, it's fine, but there's this element of like, okay, wait, I thought the Emperor was a badass, and now he just got his butt handed to him by I mean, this guy's supposed to be going toe to toe with chaos gods, and here he is, he's having his ass handed to him that way. There's an imbalance in how they write sometimes that I agree with your criticism. I wanted to see more, but I'm
Yeah.
okay with what was there.
And I felt the same way actually about the whole, murder demon and that whole encounter. I felt actually very much the same way about that. Like, that was your plan? You're gonna
It reminds me. It reminds me.
put him in Ra and say, go run.
It reminds me of the scene from Get Him. Do you remember the movie Get Him to the Greek, where he says, "Why did you do this to me?" And he looks at him. He says, "Out of love."
Well, but it seems like if the Emperor can't end this thing, imprisoning it in a custodian
One of his
seems
creations, his great creations. It's awesome.
yeah, but
It's so terrible.
Well, there's a part in the book, right, that stood out to me where, and I forget which custodian it was that was talking about how he hadn't slept in like 15 days or some bloody thing like that. He's just been fighting all the time. So then he imprisons the demon in Ra and says, "Run." And I just had this thought: he's not going to get real far. I mean, custodian and whatnot. He's complaining at 15 days. He's bloody tired. I mean,
yeah.
you might get to an Eldar craft world, but I mean, you're not going to go far.
Yeah.
Time works different. So.
And that was the Chaos God's plan. Send this one demon. But everything up to that, I loved when the Emperor showed up on the battlefield.
Yeah.
That was great. Him just laying waste to everything out there and all that.
Yeah.
That was how I pictured the Emperor being, And so going from that to that one moment, you're right. That's a letdown. The rest of the book made up for it enough that I was like, all right, whatever. Ra's running, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
And sorry, go.
I found your complaint about not complaint, your criticism of how they projected the Ultramarines and the World Eaters. I think that kind of, and we'll say the Dark Angels versus the World Eaters, that very much pointed to the character of the Legion. The Dark Angels are taciturn and secretive and very grim and lifeless in a way, whereas the World Eaters are supposed to be these berserk warriors that are just so full of fury that they're constantly digging at each other, competing with each other, jibes and stuff going at each other. That's how I imagine that they would behave, because once they get into combat, they completely lose their minds because of the nails.
With a sprinkling of Lorgar and his fancy lads.
Lorgar's tale of how they were, because as Lorgar was his legion was the only one which was forced to kneel before the Emperor, psychically beaten to their knees, because they had transgressed against the Emperor's will. So I mean, I found the writing to be in contrast to you, I found that writing to be appropriate to who they are. And as far as the Ultramarines go, well, everyone likes to pick on them. Oh, we're the best. We're the Ultramarines, the boys in blue. And then we fight the World Eaters and we get smashed.
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you personally, I like my Marines like you have out of Astartes and out of Secret Level.
Mm-hmm.
Those two outings, that is how the Astartes should be. Very few words. Very few.
Yeah,
and
those were White Consuls, right? They're Ultramarine successors, aren't they? White Consuls?
Who? No, well, in Secret Level, it was Ultramarines.
No, Astartes were the White Consuls, aren't they Ultramarine successors as well?
No. It wasn't. It was Retributors or something.
Oh, Retributors, okay.
Yeah, it was some chapter he made up, I think. So.
Yeah.
Now, for my money, I'll take Marines out of Cypher any day. I think the way that was written was just excellent.
Yeah, see, that sort of thing. And when you're talking about groups like the World Eaters or the Night Lords or that kind of thing, I picture those particular legions being more like being in prison. You know, you're dealing with folks who are that level of just monstrosity going on, and the psychotic nature and psychopathic nature of each of those, because of who their what their basis was, what they drew from, and who their Primarchs were. And so I agree with you, Kelly, on that. Whereas, of course, you can look at the Space Wolves and them always drinking beer and being, Vikings in space and all that. It's kind of in the name. I get what they were going for and all that stuff,
But
but it doesn't make them my favorite Legion, mainly because they're the stereotypes. I like the ones that are a bit different that way. I do think that they did a really good job of expanding upon and fleshing out the Blood Angels. I like them a lot, and what they did with them, and especially when you consider their origins and what they had with them as their origins, how they're just eating people.
Flesh Terrors are the originals.
And sorry, go ahead.
I think it's one of those things though, when you look at the different chapters and you look at 40K and they've got the whole thing going on with Amazon and where's that going to go? Every time I look at the universe of 40K, I see 1,000 ways that can go wrong. You pick the wrong Space Marine chapter to highlight in a story, and you've got nothing but a comedy that's really bad, and so they really got to be careful in how they go with that, because there's an image that you want to portray that fits the brand of there's nothing but war in the grim dark, and then there's what's a bad space movie.
But on the other hand, we have already gotten a gem that they can't take away from us at this point. And that was, of course, Secret Level and Astartes.
Yeah, that was amazing. Amazing.
Those are great, and we'll always have those. That's the thing we can point to and say, that was the example of what it should have been. And I don't know why we're getting IronHeart in space now, kind of thing. And
yeah.
Then also, like Lord of the Rings, that was I don't think you can find a better adaptation set of movies than those that captured everything about the books and everything about the lore and all of that, whilst fitting it in to somehow into those three movies and doing it so well. Then you have Andor, things like that. So we do have those shining moments. It's just, man, they're so brief. So brief.
They really
for
are.
that sort
They
of
really
stuff.
are. And it's just that idea, and I think everybody could agree. Just that idea. We've been involved with 40K for so long that you want to see it done justice, right? I mean,
you're
if
invested.
this happens and they pick Noise Marines, be super disappointed.
Noise Marines.
Look,
John Blanche and his love for bikes and their whole thing for the thrash metal
the
thing
Vincent
and all
Black
that.
Shadows.
You just want to slap some of them. Sometimes, please stop writing fan art for your own, your fan fiction for your own stuff. Stop it, man. Put some pride into your work. Good Lord.
Sometimes how it's done.
I guess, man. The Noise Marines, when that came out. Is that a guitar? What the hell?
So that is a Blastmaster, sir.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's a guitar.
Blastmaster. In reference to your observation on the Master of Mankind and the Emperor, I found that what we're talking about how they presented him, it was just a really good analysis of someone who's got immortality but not omnipotence or omniscience, right? I mean, and that's what we were talking about, many episodes ago when we discussed it. When I said, my opinion, because I was very much, because of what the Emperor did to Angron and how he treated him, I said, oh man, this guy's a douche. But as I learned more and more about him and read more and more about him and thought more and more about how he's not only immortal, but he's also just a pawn of beings which are more powerful and more immortal than him. He's responsible for not just Earth, but all of humanity. I mean, there's so many factors that anyone who talks to him just can't talk to him on an equal level. He's got too much going on. He's the CEO of the galaxy. So They just have no conception of how many things he's having to game in his quite prodigious and powerful mind, which um, has a viewpoint of what 40,000 years, and even the oldest space marine 10,000 years, maybe even lost in the warp or dreadnought or whatever, and they're all falling apart. But I mean, this is a guy who's from the time he was born to now has lived this lifetime, and I suspect he does not forget all those moments throughout time. Like, he considers all of them. Like, you would think that an average human with that long of a lifespan, things would fade from memory. I suspect in his mind they don't. I think he's a powerful enough psyker that his brain retains all that information. So just imagine
Well,
how
if you
much.
think about it, with all the visions that he shared with
Yeah.
Ra, it shows just how perfect that memory is, which I think is
Terrible curse.
also right. That's
Curse.
what I mean. It's a
Yeah.
curse, really, when you think about it, that you cannot forget. You cannot
Yeah.
get rid of the mistakes that you've made. You're
40,000 years.
always going to be thinking about it,
Wow.
Yeah.
You just think about it, because I've seen other presentations of immortals that you've lived 20, 30,000 years, but their brains are not his level. They're just regular humans, so they forget stuff. They can't observe everything, but he's hyper aware of everything around him. He has a hyper active memory that constantly remembers, and just to contain all of that history in his mind in one person, and then they be responsible and have that amount of power where he's now responsible for, look, I got to guide the human race or they're going to get smoked by these 15 different alien threats that we know about and the 40 that we don't. How am I going to handle? Man, what a burden it placed upon
And
him.
if you
So
think
yeah,
and think about all the guilt you must carry for all the
yeah.
people all the
Oh, he
souls
killed
that
millions
are,
and millions.
yeah,
Yeah,
that you because of you they are
yeah,
dead,
yeah.
or in some horrid
Well, the
state of
warp is not
existence,
friendly. There's no heaven. It's just the warp. You just get
Right.
consumed. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a zero sum
like
game.
yeah,
But he's
yeah.
just,
So
I
Yeah.
mean, ultimately, when you look at him, I mean, look, he's just the tragic figure on the human side.
That's
You
that's
know,
exactly that's
yeah,
exactly how I pictured it. I know a lot of people are in the you either love him or you hate him kind of camp. I
that
always looked at
tragedy.
him like you said, Kelly. I looked at him like a very tragic figure.
yeah, no
Yeah,
good
Uh,
deed goes unpunished.
Hmm.
yeah, yeah,
and
and there was no way he could avoid doing it because he knew something had to be done, and he couldn't sit back and do nothing. And
Yeah,
so figured, all right, I got it. And that's not to say that uh, that was out of hubris. I think it was more out of desperation, more than
but there was
anything
also,
else.
I've often laid at his feet the idea that the emperor never told anybody. I mean, he's master of mankind, but not master of communication, right? I mean,
Mhm.
he's not talking to a lot of people. But there's also the idea is that in the plan that he's trying to work out, who do you have to talk to? I mean, his most extensive conversations are with Ra, and beyond that, everybody he's dealt with has simply tried to manipulate or otherwise change a plan rather than just execute the plan. And so, I mean, he's that character who's like, I know what I've got to do, or I think I know what I have to do, but he's so isolated with himself that how do you turn to people? Where's the support structure to get it done? I mean, even your
Well, who would
10,000,
you trust? Who would
I
you
know,
trust?
but even
Because
the
no
if
one
you've
10,000
will
can't hold the city,
understand.
yeah, if no one else had, like you said, if no one else has that same capacity for what I mean is you can see so much more
yeah,
than what anybody else can see, that you can see all the dangers coming and all these things that are going to happen. Who do you go to as a peer to say, what do you think? So, and he does go to a few people to ask, what do you think? But it's mostly, I think, again, out of desperation, because he doesn't have anybody else to go to. And then when they answer him, he's like, all right,
He's
that's
useless.
what I
Yeah,
thought you were going to say.
yeah. And I mean, you got to come in and I'm sorry, I had to pop up my computer, but hell's bells, I forgot my So I mean, you become the answer man to everything, right? There's nobody else who can. I mean, you even tried to send the 10,000 in to hold the impossible city, and they couldn't do it. I mean, everybody's making some mistake, and he was trying to tell him, hey, you got to fight harder. We can't lose this one, and then everybody loses, and then he has to consume the 1,000 psychers to go down there and ultimately lose to some demon that he can't defeat.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
I say on top of it, I mean, you got Zarhulash tells what's his name, the mechanical guy, whose name is escaping me right now, because Belisarius Call. Zarhulash tells Belisarius Call, so he's just a weapon without a sheath. You know, he's a sword without a sheath. He's a tool that's been left behind.
A tool of the old ones.
Yeah. And to have that, and at some point, I mean, I'm sure he understands that he's nothing but a pawn for forces that are even greater than him in a game which is, again, bigger than the one that he's involved in, right? So to have that kind of knowledge and then understand, like, well, I was just created to be the cause, the prime cause of something else. And, you know, I honestly, everything I'm doing is really doomed to failure, but I'm going to keep trying anyway. I mean, it's heroic in a way, but it's also tragic.
Yeah, I think of him kind of like Dr. Manhattan, you know, where he can just, he's another puppet. He can just see the strings, you know?
Yes, absolutely. No, that's a very good analogy. Yeah. He's got this great power, but he's like, well, shit.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do, you know? Yeah.
But
yeah,
there
exactly.
The thing that I was after ultimately was after reading Betrayers, going back to that moment when he's talking to Harkin Land about Angron. And the thing that stood out for me is when he referred to Angron as an it. You know, I'll return it to its legion.
Yeah.
And at that point, you really understand what the Primarchs are. The Primarchs have no idea what they are.
They're bullets.
Yeah, they're well. It's like you were just talking about the Emperor is a relic of some past era. The Primarchs are just a tool to the Emperor to accomplish an end. They and so you have to detach. The Emperor's detached a lot of emotion from things, and so to understand him, you have to start to detach that as the reader to be able to put it together, because otherwise you do see the emotional manipulation of Lorgar talking to Angron and saying, he was up there in space, he had a whole legion of Marines, he could have come down and saved all your brothers and sisters but didn't, and
want to.
no need. I just need the thing. I don't. You guys can do whatever you need to do.
Yeah, this planet of people, I'm going to destroy 50 of these next week. So this means nothing to me. I mean, and then in 10,000 years, I'm going to eat the population of this planet in the course of a month. So
well,
what do I care about it?
You wonder about that, why that would happen. But if you think about it, Angron already had the nails by the time he showed up.
Yeah, you got stuck with him.
Right. So saving all those people there, in addition to him, like he had done with many of the other Primarchs, saving all those people in addition to Angron, or helping Angron or something like that. I think I know he has enough foresight to see Angron's already got this stuff in his head. I'm fighting against the clock before this stuff, takes a toll on him, where he's no longer useful to me as anything really, other than maybe an attack dog. And so why am I going to put all this effort into something that's really going to bear no fruit? I just need to try to aim the weapon as long as I can and get out of it what I can get out of it,
Yeah. Well, being a World Eaters aficionado as I am, I mean, I thought deeply about the idea, if he had saved them, it wouldn't have provided Angron. So he's smart enough, and this just speaks to his foresight and his ability to kind of predict where things are going. If he had saved the tribe, Angron would never have been motivated, because he knew Angron was broken immediately. As soon as he saw what had happened to him, he said, yeah, this thing, it's never going to be right. So he's like, what can I do to maximize the potential of what I have? As you said, Sean, what can I do to make this thing work for me until I got to throw it away? Because as we all know, his plan was to eventually either imprison or get rid of all the Primarchs and kill all the Space Marines and replace them, had the Webway project worked. So his thought process was, I would suspect, it's like, okay, if I save these people, and I'm sure he wouldn't admit this to anyone unless pressed, then he doesn't have the motivation. He was willing. He knew Angron couldn't hurt him because he's Angron and he's the emperor. So he said, what can I do to make him as useful as possible? Well, let's make him so angry that all I do is I throw him at the worst planets that I can, that I know can't be redeemed, and they scour them clean of every living thing. What do I need to do that? Well, let's make sure that everything he ever cared about in his horrible life that I've now know has happened to him, because Angron's tale is a tale of tragedy. You talk about tragedy. Angron's tale is a tale of tragedy. And what can I do to make sure that fury never stops, ever? Because he knows Khorne, at some point, he probably knows Khorne's going to take him.
Mm-hmm. I don't see how he could not.
Yeah, he knows he's very well aware of all the Chaos Gods because he's done deals with them already. So he's aware that, like, look, I know this is the way this is going to turn out. But since all of these are just guns and the Space Marines are just bullets, what can I do? I don't care what he does to his Legion. I don't care how he punishes them. To me, they're all expendable all the time. They're just ammunition for the fight that I'm fighting. So what can I do? So he doesn't save them. The real reason, I think, why he didn't save his people, was to make Angron what he was. Because when he had him on the table, like you said, he said, there's no way. I can't fix this. Even I can't fix this. I'm the greatest geneticist and one of the greatest scientists and engineers who's ever lived. I can't do anything with this. It's too deeply wrapped around him. So, what can I do?
Doesn't make it not true.
Yeah, I know. I mean, but what can I do? What can I do to make him useful? Well, let's make him as mad as possible, that a fury that never ends, and just throw him until he burns up, right? And that's exactly what happened in Betrayer. Is he eventually, Lorgar? He knew that. Lorgar said, "Well, the only way I could save him and this is the ironic thing, the only way I could save him from the nails is to turn him into what he became, and then." Yeah. What he became still has the nails.
Yeah.
Khorne's joke is, you're going to keep the nails. Here, you know what? We're going to reshape your entire being, but the only thing we're not going to change are the nails.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you son of a...
Dude's been screwed for eternity.
Yep.
Yeah. Right, but that's the appeal of 40K. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, humans yearn for this like happy ending and this justice and these things, and you don't get it in 40K.
Nope.
Right? So the Emperor being this tragic figure, and there being like a way it could have gone right, but everybody made the wrong choices. Like, that tragedy is what makes 40K 40K, right? I don't want it another way.
All right.
Like, part of me does, but it wouldn't be 40K.
Well, the part of you that wants it to be the other way, right? The part of you that wants it to be the other way is there because you understand how you can only understand the sweet because you've got the sour. But if you get rid of the sour, all you have is sweet, and you're just, there's no satisfaction with that. So I think that
right, and 40K works because it's like, let's turn the sour up to 11.
Yeah. I mean, let's just really do that number up. And you can't just say it with the Emperor. The old ones had the same issue.
Yeah.
The old ones have, theirs was the same trap, if you will. I don't know who would have made the old ones and all that stuff, but the idea, of course, being that no matter where you on that list, you're still a puppet. And I even throw the Chaos Gods into that, and they were puppets as well. They're trapped by their own nature. They can't do anything else other than what they are. So Khorne is always going to be slave to bloodlust and battle and all that. Excuse me.
And humanity. They all depend on humanity. Without humanity, that was the plan, was to remove humanity and starve them all to death.
The only one I think who wasn't like that is the Catan. The Catan may have had actual freedom. They were just evil.
Yeah, because they were connected only to the physical universe. They
were connected to the physical universe, so they had no need to feed on a specific emotion or something like that. Yeah. They could eat stars, right? But they weren't connected to, this is my portfolio of whatever emotional food I need or whatever. They just found out, oh, these souls taste good too, so I'll eat these. And so they just went around destroying things and had this amazing amount of power and all that. I wonder if
Galactus. They were like Galactus in a way.
Yeah, but like,
Yeah.
not one. Well, Galactus has remorse,
Yeah.
for
don't.
what he has to do. They don't. They don't
Yeah.
care. And so maybe they were the only ones who were free that way, at least in how they thought. I don't know if they actually were. Maybe they were created by
That's right.
something
And
else.
then
But
look what happened to them.
what?
They got enslaved by
can.
the Necrons enslaved.
Seems
get
like there's still top of the food chain. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, Necrons are like, this battle's tough. Let's
outsmarted
need a little help.
Belisarius Call seems to be top of the food chain as far as I can see.
I don't know about that. You get he couldn't kill Zarhalash, and so
still, he tricked him. I mean, you trick him. I mean,
all right. You throw him over into a black hole or something. He noshes on that for a while, and
pretty good.
then
Pretty
comes
good
out.
for a
And,
mechanical monkey. I mean,
it's not like he's going anywhere. Zarhalash will show up later. All the Catan. See, that's the thing. At the end of everything, Nurgle would be like the last one on the warp side before that stilled, right? There's nothing left to feed it because there's nothing left on this side that they can feed on. So suddenly the warp is still. They all die out. Everything's becalmed in there. Over on the material side, however, the Catan are going to be there. They're going to be there until ostensibly forever.
Yeah.
You would have said until everything, ended in the big rip and all that. But now that's in question, and they think it actually might not work out that way. So maybe the Catan would have been the only ones there because no matter what happened, they'd still have stuff to eat and live amongst and all that. They just waited out until more life comes about and they can do their thing then. So I don't know. Maybe they're the ultimate winners in this whole thing. I don't know.
And my money's on the Jakaro.
That's true. That's true. The wild card.
Yeah.
That's
true.
They'll
build like a Jakaro digital Angron and point it at the universe and kill it all.
Yeah, the Jakaro, that's true. That's true. The Bugs Bunny of the 40K universe.
They are the greatest.
And that should be what the Amazon
that's the thing that I
on.
like in 40K and other places where it's done, where you don't color in the whole map. You know what I mean? I like it when there's some stuff that we just don't know, and the Jakaro fit that. You know what I'm saying? Like, what do they want? What are they going to do? Where did they come from? Like,
see,
do they have some goals? That kind of thing.
I like the idea, and I've liked how they've always been portrayed that way. They may be the only other one that's actually free too, because we don't know. We've never heard of one of them being subject to chaos or any of that stuff. They've always been an enigma and doing their own thing. And if they just don't like stuff, they just get out of there. They fold a paper in certain ways and some sort of geographic field shows up and they disappear, So, yeah, maybe so. Maybe it's them and the Catan. That's it. That's the ones who are there at the end of everything. Yeah, that could be.
I would be happy with that ending.
Ships.
I would be too. I think it'd be great.
I think that's the happy ending.
I do too.
Arrow, living in peace.
Yeah.
Flying around in their glass
skipping
walls.
off into the sunset hand in hand.
Anybody who's listening to this later, these are some deep 40K cuts for you. I hope you're up on your lore.
While the galaxy burns behind them.
Now, I wanted to ask you guys something else. And I'm really nervous to ask it. Mainly because I'm afraid of the answer, and I don't want to go down the negative road. You know what I mean?
The thing you said at the beginning of the show, because don't say that now.
No, not that. Although that is true. That is true. I was thinking about that. That'd be a great shirt too. You just have it like in mirror, so one side is this. You know what I mean? But I don't know where you'd wear it. Maybe the White House. Maybe there. Did any of you see IronHeart?
No.
I saw episode 1 of IronHeart last night as a form of homework.
Okay. All right. I'm afraid to ask. How horrible was it?
Well, needless to say, I've heard everybody else telling me how horrible it is, right? All the YouTube people and etc. And I was like, you know what? There's been some things that I've heard were like off, and I'll go see this movie, and I'm like, it was fine. Like I see what they're saying, but it wasn't as bad as all that. So I was like, I'm gonna have an open mind. I'm gonna watch episode 1. It was as awful as they said. It was terrible. Like it doesn't make any sense at all. It's so if you're that smart as Riri Williams, like let's start with so smart, full ride, MIT. And you're like, boy, I sure wish I had some money. Full stop right there. You can apply 10% of your smarts to earning some money to let you go do the things that you want to do in life, like build this, this Iron Man type armor. Like, nope, let's resort to a life of crime. It's like, cut. I mean, it was laughably dumb. And don't get me started on the lovable gang of misfit criminals. They were terrible. The Hood. It's like, I don't know, give him a cape and we'll call him the Hood. I mean, it was awful. It was.
Where the Hood at?
You know what?
Yeah, it was like wow. And I didn't read the comics. Rich is familiar with the comics. I'm familiar with the character, and I was like, oh, okay, like I'm here for young black females, Tony Stark, like as an idea, as a concept. I'm like, okay, this sounds pretty cool. If this is how you're going to handle it, like it's awful. It was terrible. I'm just
So know what? It's one of those things that like I come into most things with expecting it to kind of fall short. So
you're avoiding this.
Yeah. I approach most things with skepticism.
There's my one.
But when Mark, who generally likes everything, when he comes in and says, "No, this was bad," that really means something. Like I will never watch that now because Mark has said that.
Nor should you.
Yeah, I wouldn't have watched it to begin with, but now that Mark has said that, that's like never happened.
The kiss of death.
Yeah.
So, as Mark and I were discussing before we started recording, I am familiar with the comics, and I have seen complete synopses of every episode with minimal criticism of them during the episode. And I will say that I am flabbergasted that they chose just not to do a Batwoman on this and shelve it and just never let it see the light of day, because to release, like Mark said, it's just makes no sense that someone who's supposedly of Tony, one of the top 10 in.
Anybody else hear an echo when Rich was talking, and then his halting style sounds like he's delivering this commentary in a stadium?
No, but I kind of wish I had.
Yeah. So now, Rich, you stopped on us a minute back. You're gonna have to start over.
Super. So Mark brought this up before we started.
That part we heard.
Okay, good. Having been familiar with the comics and the show, the comics are not much better, if at all better, than the show. However, the fact that they didn't shelve this like they did Batwoman,
right,
is flabbergasting. And to make the assertion that this person, Riri Williams, is one of the top intelligences and technological marvels of the Marvel Universe, and the fact that all she wants is the only difference between her and she even says the only difference between Tony Stark and me is that he's a billionaire. But then you go back to this scene, and hold on a second here. So you make that point where he makes everything. He made his original suit in a cave with a box of scraps. But, oh, whoa! Stand by, or no Rick and Morty. Thank you. The fact that that's their argument, all she needed is money, and then she'd be a Tony Stark. But she has no heroic journey at all. She, in fact, becomes a supervillain throughout the entire series. is just why would
No,
you
she
try-
is a hero because she straight up says, "I don't want to hurt people." Or I don't want to kill people during her interview with the lovable gang of criminal misfits. That's their way of saying, like, "Oh, I'm going to be a criminal, but I'm not going to be a real criminal."
Yeah,
You're going to be a Boba Fett
masterfully
level.
handled. Yeah, masterfully handled, writing crew. Good job.
Yeah, all they do is cripple poor security guards who are just trying to earn a living. I mean, the injuries that the security guards they beat up must have sustained are monumental. So, you know, if they didn't kill anybody, and then as the show goes on, I won't spoil it for you, Mark, but she goes back on that promise.
Oh,
Are you gonna watch? Are you gonna watch the rest of that, Mark?
Oh, you must.
Oh, he'll watch
I
it.
may
You should
just
at least
for the sake of.
You should punish yourself the whole way. Apparently,
yeah, I feel like I need to punish myself by watching terrible entertainment.
Yeah.
So Sacha Baron
I mean,
Cohen,
I watched most of the ninja movies from the '80s, so I'm used to watching terrible.
Well, those are great
entertainment.
So Sacha Baron Cohen does show up in episode 6, and his performance is the best thing about the show.
I've heard that.
The character he shows up as is interesting for this show, and her decisions with that character are also interesting for a hero. But she's a terrible representation of everything they wanted to put forward. You know, she was supposed to be this uplifting representation of American Black culture, and she ends up being a trope for the worst elements of every criticism of that culture. So it's just bad. It's really bad. In the comics, not much better, but here it really, I don't even think they bothered to read the comics in some respects. I think they just like, it's we're just sticking it out there. It'll be fine.
And a couple more thoughts, like opening up, she gets booted out of MIT because she's been helping other kids cheat. Okay, cool. So she takes her IronHeart armor that she built and flies home
with her
to Chicago.
grant money. Because grant money is hers.
Yeah, it's her. Okay, it's hers. Whatever. Anyway, she takes this armor. It's arguable whether it's hers or not. She's flying home. They finally do the computer thing to expel her. So the AI that's flying the suit stops working, and she can't take it over on manual, and she crashes in Chicago, and she ends up having to walk 10 blocks down the street, you know, with carrying bundles of this busted up armor. And I'm like, okay, cool. We've got a new Iron Man type series, and you busted up the armor halfway through episode 1 that she doesn't get to use it. Why do I want to watch this? I want to see Iron Man do Iron Man. Okay, you've got a young female Iron Man being Iron Man. Cool. I want to see her doing Iron Man stuff, not hanging out in her kitchen doing craft projects.
Wait a minute. This from the man who loves Michael Bay and Transformers? No. You don't get to.
You know what?
You don't get to jump off the Bumblebee tow truck.
When we were watching
friend.
the tow truck was towing a Transformer who was shooting.
I like
doing
that.
Transformer stuff.
At
I like
what?
movies too, Mark.
At Decepticons.
Right.
Where
we also got to see
where? Because you didn't. You
in
got
Chicago.
to see. You got to see the ass end of a
actually.
tow truck running around streets. That's what you got to see.
It was driven by Megan Fox. If you got to have me watch Transformers, you definitely need to have me watching Megan Fox.
Did this outing then have Megan Fox? Is that who was in
It did not have Megan
Fox. Then your logic falls flat on its face on both counts, my friend. Out-and-zy.
Any film which combines Mark Wahlberg and the Predacons is fine in my book.
Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, he's in Transformers movies. Age of
like
Extinction.
The fifth
he wasn't in the first one.
Not the first one. I'm talking about the.
I'm talking
series.
about the first one.
Well, I'm talking about Michael Bay. So.
Yeah, well, I stopped after the first one. That was it.
Oh, I did not. I've seen them all. I've seen all of them, including the Bumblebee film. I
went home and washed my brain out after that movie, and I was done with Michael Bay and all of his nonsense. I have not seen
the Age of Beasts yet, but I do have it reserved on my queue to watch.
Yeah.
because I want to see
right.
the monkey.
But
monkey
going back
transform.
to stupid Ironheart, like we have a real world example. Like Elon Musk wants to go to Mars, and he's like, "Okay, cool. I'm gonna invent PayPal. I'm gonna take that money, and I'm gonna invent Tesla, and I'm gonna take that money, and I'm gonna invent SpaceX, and I'm gonna
I think he
invent,
invented Tesla.
He didn't
all these
invent
different
Tesla.
things."
He means
He
I'm
didn't
gonna
invent
I'm
Tesla.
gonna steal Tesla. That's what he
You're
meant.
going to steal Tesla, right? Make a bunch of money on it, right? But again, here's an example of a very smart individual who needs money to accomplish their goals, right?
Uh-huh.
And he's like, "Cool. Here's this thing that I built and sold. Here's this other thing that I built and sold." And I don't care if you agree with him or don't agree with him. The man's got a plan, and he's working the plan. Where this one, it's like, man, I just need some money. Criminal gang wants to hire me, sure. And how does anybody think that's a good idea? Because you're going to end up in jail as soon as one of them gets caught. And this gang is full of amateurs.
Well, I'll
like
give
they're
you
so dumb.
But see, I'll give you this as a defense. If it was us who were playing that out as a role-playing game, we definitely would have gone the criminal route. We definitely would have done that.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing left to do but go back to basics.
All right, I will give you that for the sake of an entertainment franchise. It does open up some more narrative possibilities. Okay.
But if you're going to do it,
I can
you need
suspend
to
my disbelief so far.
Right.
And I think watching a show of her building a company and selling it and building this technology and selling it is boring.
Right. And if you're going to do the criminal part, you have to be, you can't do it in the criminal with the heart of gold way. You have to do it in the, this is truly a criminal enterprise kind of way. And then you've got something interesting. Then you've got my attention. If this is her creating, okay, I'm going to start this cartel over here so I can fund this, you know, you do the dark version of the entrepreneur thing. That might be interesting. Yeah. But if you're doing it with the heart of gold thing where, no, we're not going to hurt anybody kind of stuff and all that, it's kind of, then you've lost flavor for me. You know what I mean?
Right.
So.
Right. And it's what kind of story are you trying to tell? Is this, you know, grounded in reality, gritty, think Daredevil, Punisher, you know, some of those that are a little bit more street level heroes, but everything makes sense? Or is it, you know, we're going to blow up half the city, but everyone's going to come crawling out of the wreckage and be like, "Oh, I'm okay," like the A-Team, right? You know, like where are we falling on this continuum of, is this stylized fun violence where no one gets hurt, a la Bugs Bunny, or is this, you know, the Punisher where he's going to go through and kill all the people who deserve it because they're bad guys?
Did she, in service to the A-Team, did she have a couple of mini 14s?
They were strapped into the underarms of her armor.
Okay. Little pinions on her shoulder with those, and shooting at people. It would burst, the little bullet bursts behind their feet perfectly
as they ran away from it. It was following them.
Callie, you've been trying to get in a point there. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the criminal gang route. I mean, it's really what criminal gang you hook up with. I mean, because not all of them go to jail, Mark. Okay, I mean, she could have partnered with the Wing Kong exchange, you know, because David Lopan, he never went to jail. You know, she would have.
You're right. He never went to jail.
She would have been set, right?
But they're in Chicago, not San Francisco.
David Lopan would never stoop to consorting with this amateurish outing, if amateurish.
Indeed.
Yeah, that ain't happening. He's not going to sully himself with that. David Lopan is Palpatine level, not Ironheart level.
Right. And don't get me wrong, but like the Hood is the worst villain intro ever. It's a dude in a cape. He looks like he's a theater kid. Right? Like, you know, like, and I know that in the comics, the Hood he's a bad guy. You know what I mean? Like he's a villain, right? And in this one, it's like, oh, there's that guy I recognize from a couple of movies in a cape.
Yeah.
Right? He's not wearing it up over his head, looking all cool and badass. He's just like, hey, I've got a cape. And there's some stupid reveal where he's getting tattoos or something.
It sounds very much like
and there's something sinister or mystical about this cape, but you didn't give me enough in one, and the guy didn't have this intro of Darth Vader for the first time we see him.
Well,
which is something that character needs. He looks like a dude in a cape, and unless it gets way better, but you got one chance to make a first impression, and they didn't. What was that, Rich?
As far as the writing goes, remember the hood that he's wearing is indestructible. And as you get to the later episodes, I want you to remember that fact. That hood, it is a mystic artifact, but it is indestructible. And that's all I'm going to say. Wait a couple episodes, and you'll see how good
you said that was all you were going to say, and then you kept talking.
You kept talking. It's unacceptable. Right, but again, we're trying to write this show that cost millions of dozens of millions of dollars. I have no idea what it cost, but I'm sure it was way too much. And your big intro to this mystic artifact, and the dude who's wearing it is a 3/4 shot where it's kind of like his back, and you see most, and he turns around and looks at you. Some dude in a costume. Like, come on, man. You can't do any better. Like, show him doing something badass. Demonstrate how indestructible this hood is. Right? Nope, we got none of that. And he's just, during the heist that they show in the beginning, he's sitting in a van or something, and they don't show him doing anything cool with this hood. Like, this is not how you introduce a main villain or a main character.
Yes.
Period. He's, I got a magic hood. Great. What did we do with Stephen Strange? He's got a magic hood also.
Mm.
Like, in his movies, it's an actual character. In this one, it looks like a theater kid just walked out of wardrobe.
I think the magic hood thing has been done to death. I need to see something new.
Mm. Mm.
I think
you were talking, Mark,
of Little Red Riding Hood with a magic hood.
As you were talking about that, Mark,
the hood is more sensible.
As you were talking about that, Mark, I was thinking to myself, I would love to see a superhero version of the Heat shootout.
Mm.
That's what I would like.
That sounds like something the boys could queue up.
No, the boys. Season. No, the boys would do.
Girls get it done.
The boys would try to get it. The boys. You're talking about the series, I take it. The series. The boys wouldn't do it like I'm talking about. The Heat, that shootout scene in Heat is the best because it is so authentic. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's why that one's the best. I don't know how you would do that with the superhero villain thing, but as you were talking about it, I was thinking that's the level of villain that I would want to see. You can't say that De Niro's character and all those guys were truly, truly evil, but you can't say that they weren't willing to go there to be able to get their objective done.
Right.
They didn't.
Or was professionals.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, it's in the line of Reservoir Dogs. If there's somebody between me and that door, like, hey, I'm going to go through you.
Yeah.
And they're talking about killing, cops versus real people. Like, that says something to how they look at, like, cops are an obstacle. I'm playing this. I've decided to throw my hat in this criminal ring. Cops come with that, right? And civilians are just out of everybody's way. And it's they're not out trying to hurt random people. Stuff happens, right? It's not a thing that they're looking for, but professionals are going to do the professional thing, which is why they killed those two guards at the beginning after the guy shot one. They're like, well, we're already all up on this murder beef. No witnesses. It was not we're being evil for the sake of it. That was a calculated professional, like, okay, this went south. Let's cut our losses as much as we can. And nobody in this IronHeart gang is making those kind of calculations. It's like, oh, we've got the muscle and the tech guy and the
Eric Andre
person who's going to burn through the lock. And, like, it was just, it was.
Hey, let me ask you something, Mark, because I
am disgusted at the amount of money that's spent on something that is so poorly done.
700,000 pounds estimated budget. So,
yes, Sean.
I wanted to ask you, just because I know the Kelly and Rich aren't really going to care about spoilers with this. So I wanted to ask you real quick about Sinners.
Yes.
I know you liked it, all the way around, liked it.
Mm-hmm.
My issue with it is actually at the end. My issue with it is there.
Like the post-credit?
Well, actually...
Or before that?
I would say a little bit of both.
Okay.
I would say a little bit of both, but mostly with that post credit. The end scene has to set up the post credit bit, so that's why I say a little bit of both. I love the writing, the acting, the story, all of that. I love the portrayals and all those things all the way up through it. The issues I have with it are that movie at the end gave you this moment of what would be catharsis, right? I'm talking about the end scene where he goes outside and shoots all the guys down and all that stuff,
Yep.
John Wick style, right?
Mm-hmm.
That felt incongruous with me for what the rest of the movie was. The movie was setting up to be something super, super tragic, right? And then at the very end, they give you this, oh, I'm going to throw in this what's his face who did Django and Inglorious Bastards.
Yeah. Tarantino.
Yes, thank you. The Tarantino-esque moment at the end, instead of keeping with the tempo that it had throughout the rest of the movie, where it ends on this kind of somber. You're not sure it's a good ending. You're not sure that something good or something bad happened or any of that. You just know something momentous happened and that's how it was, right? It gives you this, I'm going to take these dudes out and, here's your catharsis moment at the end because it's real cool to kill them. And it just felt to me out of place and unfortunate because it took away from the rest of the movie, which was like way up here, to give you this one satisfaction moment at the very end. And then in the after credits part, the thing that didn't make sense to me was because you saw how evil, truly evil, those vampires were portrayed, which was great. It reminded me of, if you'd ever seen the show From. I don't know if you've ever
I've
seen
not seen
that. Okay, people are in this town where these demon-like people, monster things come out at night, and they sit there and they talk sweet to you at the window and say, let me in, they'll look like your loved ones and all that sort of tropish stuff. But the moment you let them in, they are eviscerating you, right? Just vicious. And that's what these vampires were like, very, very, empathetic, and you want to help this person out to help them get away from and bring them in and all that. But the moment you get them in, I mean, it's a bloodbath, and the true evil comes out and all of that. How is it at the end that he makes and regardless of blood, regardless of relation, that's just how these transformations take place. How is it at the end he's making a deal that, okay, you're not gonna harm this one guy, I'm gonna let you live, and but you can't go and harm this one guy? How does that hold? All throughout the movie, it's, I'll tell you whatever you want to hear as long as you let me in. Then the moment you let me in, I'm eating you. But at the end, it's like, I promised I'm not going to do anything to you. It seemed incongruous, those two moments, and those were the two things that took the shine off of the project.
Let's address them each separately because I think they're not 100% related.
You mean ad seriatim?
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant to say. The shootout, I felt was, you're right. It was this moment of catharsis. Let's go after these, Ku Klux Klan members who were trying to set up. They were bad men and they needed to kill him.
Yeah.
I think what it accomplished from a storytelling standpoint is we wanted to kill the other brother, not by the vampires, but give him a chance to see his girlfriend and baby as he was passing away, and he gets the happy ending. So from that standpoint, yeah, I agree with you. It was the part that stood out as, why is this here? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Right. I 100% agree with that, but I'm willing to suspend some disbelief and enjoy the movie and enjoy the ride. And I was like, okay, I agree with you. It was like, it felt a little indulgent, right? Like, it's 1930s. It's racism and these kind of things. So it felt like a way to make a statement and have like a really cool shootout scene. And it was a cool shootout scene. I don't know how realistic it was. It was 10, 15 guys that all came with guns to kill you.
Yeah.
and aha, you jump out of the woods and kill all of them. And, so I'm glad he didn't survive the shootout, like that at least made a certain amount of sense. But from a storytelling standpoint, I'm like, I agree with you. It fit in the least with it. And it felt a tad self-indulgent from the filmmaker standpoint, but it didn't wholly detract from the movie for me. But I agree with what you're saying there. I kind of liked the scene where they show up later, the post-credit scene, and in order to let the brother live, he was like, you can't go after, I forget the guy's names, the musician. Like, you got to leave him alone and one of the premises of the movie is these people that have this gift of music transcends time and space, and it's almost like a superpower, but it attracts evil as well because there's some power in it that will give them what they want, right? And so that's part of the reason these vampires are attracted is this guy is such a gifted musician, and that scene where he's playing and they show the different other types of musicians from different eras.
Right.
I love that scene. It was really, really well done. But the part of the mythos of this movie is that this music has power and the musician has power, and people want that for their own ends, whatever. But we also showed that the vampires can't come in unless they're invited, and there's certain rules that they do have to abide by.
Right.
And I kind of enjoyed that, where it's like, listen, I'm going to let you live, but you have to leave the musician alone. And the fact that it was his cousin, the musician was the vampire's cousin, and they knew each other, and those kind of I kind of thoroughly enjoyed that, where they show up at the end of his life and reveal themselves, and was like, they actually, I think they offered him the choice, like, we could turn you if you want.
They did offer him that.
Want that?
Yeah, they did offer him that.
Right.
But
I enjoyed it. It didn't take me out of the movie. I like I said, the shootout scene, little indulgent. I'm like, okay, whatever. I could live with it, but I agree with you. To me, it was a bit like that Avengers Endgame where all the girls show up.
Yeah.
And they're like, don't worry, she's got help. And it felt like the one off note in a beautiful song.
Yeah.
Right. And I was just like, okay, whatever. You want to give all the female superheroes their moment in the movie. And it was fine, but it felt a little off and pandering. And in this movie, I also felt it was a little off, a little pandering, but it got us where we needed to be, where the brother gets shot. And as he's dying, he sees, his dead, I'm going to call it the wife, dead wife and baby, and he's going to go be with them. So I kind of enjoyed that aspect of it. And like I said, the ending scene, man, it was a nice little tie up. I was like, okay, that was really, really, I enjoyed it. So I guess I'm agree with you on one point, and the other point, I'm like, I see what you're saying, but I enjoyed it. Does that make sense?
I enjoyed the movie. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, I enjoyed it. There were so many good aspects to it and all that. I really did like it. That's what made those two moments stick out so much for me, because it was right there at the end. And I thought, okay, we're right here. They're going to stick the landing. Let's see how this happens. And I was like, wait a minute, and it took me out of it, at the moment. I'm like, no, this was really, really good. Don't, and that's why it stood out.
You're
so
saying
much.
It could have ended without both of those scenes, and you would still have enjoyed the movie.
Or if you're going to do that last after credit scene, you could set it up better to be explained at the end without trying to go through some sort of I'm going to fill in the blanks mental gymnastics.
I did see somebody commenting on the movie where they were like, part of the reason that the dude had the shootout was because his brother's body was still inside the building.
Yeah.
But in the flashback, they showed the two of them running away when all the other vampires were trying to attack the dude. And so that did his comment. I was like, oh, I could see that if it were true, but I don't feel like it was true because the two of them ran away, which is why they survived. And so he wasn't doing that to protect his brother who was hiding from the sunlight inside the building, which, I think that was somebody trying to maybe justify the scenes.
I think
whatever.
It absolutely
but
was.
I'm not buying that. But I was like, oh, okay, was he doing it to protect his brother? And then a couple seconds of thought was like, no, because they showed him running away, and and they weren't hiding in the building.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Like it was.
And let me
It was
say,
just
and let me
enough off
say,
the top.
I would still recommend seeing the movie wholeheartedly. I
Oh yeah,
still
100%.
recommend.
Like my wife didn't want to go because she didn't want to see a horror movie. She's not into horror movie, but this wasn't a horror movie. There were some jump scares and a couple of scary elements to it, but I wouldn't call it a horror movie.
Right.
It was From Dusk Till Dawn was an action comedy with some horror elements, right? This is a drama.
Well, see, this was I would place this. I would place this if From Dusk Till Dawn is on this side over here. I would place this one on this side over here at the same level of accomplishment for what it was trying to be. Right.
Yeah.
This one was so well written and so well done, so well acted, and all those things. I would absolutely wholeheartedly recommend seeing it. Even with those two little points that I brought up there, I would absolutely recommend it.
I'm not going to.
That's kind of.
But we didn't ruin
now
anything.
That we've spoiled it.
I assure you.
But it was so well done that way. I'm just saying those 2 points, that's why they stick out so much to me, is because it was where they're placed, which is right at the end of the story, and that's why.
Yeah,
so, but I would absolutely
shootout felt the most that it detracted more than anything else. I liked the end credit scene and the kind of the way they tied that up, and I was like, because the guy might be crazy evil and turning vampires left, right, and center. Like, you don't know. They just show up and meet an old friend before he's going to pass away, and let him know that hey, we've been watching you, but we've been leaving you alone. Because the guy had this choice: is he gonna run with his gift of music, or is he gonna forsake the sinning ways and his father's a preacher and go back to church? And so there was a lot of subtext in there that I actually really enjoyed. So two thumbs up on the movie. I think Michael B. Jordan did a great job. I think all of the other actors did a really good job too. I can't think of one role in there that was like, oh, that one wasn't like. And the bad guy, the vampire, and the music that they played, and like it was.
I thought he did
so well done.
I thought he did a great job in his role as a vampire. Switching from 0 to 60 in no time flat and doing it.
Yeah,
it was just really well done.
Was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Go watch it. 2 thumbs up on Sinners.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting to get your.
And to watch something like that and then go watch IronHeart, it's just they're both moving pictures on a screen.
That's what you get.
Holy shit, what a difference.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, you know what I'm saying? Like, for real. The language was a choice, and I need you to understand that choice was, on the one hand, this is so poorly done. You guys are just shoveling money into an incinerator. And yet other people are able to pull off stuff like Godzilla -1 and Sinners, and
on
I don't know
a shoestring budget.
I don't know what the budget was, but I'm sure it was
a lot less than that.
What Disney is pissing away on the crap that they are putting out. Disney, learn to take the tax write-off. You don't have to put everything out. Like, for real, slow down. Slow down, buddy. Get some good writers in there that are passionate about this. I just, come on, man. Like, I want some of this stuff to be good. And when the good stuff comes along and you see it, it really highlights how bad some of this other stuff is.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. So it makes you grateful for those gems you have. But all right, guys. Well, thank you very much. And, thank you all for watching and listening and all that, and we will see you next time.
This concludes our Speak Nerd and Enter
Remember,
podcast.
you have